Hi, everyone.
Hi, we have with us Nitin. Nitin has very graciously agreed to spend his Sunday morning with us. That's Sunday morning for you, right? Early morning on Sunday?
Yeah, it's 9:30 in the morning. So, yeah.
Yes, to help other ex-UPSC aspirants and current aspirants move on beyond UPSC. Because Nitin has had his own tryst with UPSC. He wrote the exam in 2017, 18, and 19. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's currently a first-year student at Harvard Kennedy School studying the Masters in Public Administration and International Development course. We will start the session by talking about admits at Ivy League and other universities and the process, and also the course at Harvard. We have a lot of very Harvard-specific questions, so I'll take those one by one. If you have other questions as the session goes on, please feel free to enter them in the chat. और अगर आपको चाहिए कि हम हिंदी में बात करें, since we are both from Hindi speaking regions, we can switch to Hindi, but largely the conversation will be in English since there are people from all parts of India attending.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, Nitin, would you like to introduce yourself briefly? Maybe you can talk a little bit about your UPSC journey and what motivated you to do what you're doing right now. How did you come here? What was the journey like?
Yeah, thank you, Sargam, for this opportunity and everyone to attend this session. Again, to start things, I'm not an expert either in UPSC because I didn't qualify, and neither I'm an expert in maybe public policy development because I'm a very new in this whole domain. But this webinar, I suppose, has an objective to reach out to people like us who had prepared maybe for a few years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Depending upon the number of attempts we gave. But this webinar is generally just trying to reach out to people like you, me, Sargam, and other people so that we know what we are doing, A, and B, we know when to perhaps come out of it if we want to, whenever as such. Yeah, so coming on the introduction part, as you mentioned about my present study here at MPAID in Harvard. Before that, yeah, I prepared for UPSC. I gave 3 attempts, 17, 18, and 19. In 17, I qualified prelims, and gave my mains, but missed an interview call by 9 marks. I thought, okay, that's good. Maybe I'm doing good. So I gave the next year in 2018, where I gave my prelims, then qualified mains, then gave interview. In interview, I got perhaps 179, which was a good score as such as per people and the so-called coaching experts. But at the end of the day, I still missed my final list by 13 marks, thanks to my optional. And in 2019, I thought, now I'm so close to this whole process. Now maybe it's like a very good progression for me, prelims, mains, interview, which might not be the case with many people. I know so many friends of mine who are now in services. And a couple of them, in fact, did not clear prelims for like 4 times in a row, but then became IAS, IPS in the 5th or 6th attempt. So yeah, the journeys can be different. Hence, we should never compare the journey of any aspirant or even people like me or you, Sargam, anyone, which we obviously tempt to do many a times. So yeah, in 2019, I again gave thinking this has to be my last attempt, which I believe you all should have, that how many attempts you really want to give to this examination. So in 2019, I gave prelims, mains, and was confident for for an interview call because I felt, well, that's what I've achieved the last year, so nobody can stop me now. Okay, but I don't know what happened. I gave exam decently only, but I missed my interview call by 7 marks, and so even like as we all know that our results or our marks come so late that sometimes we are not even aware of what happened, and you had to still move on in your life. So I had started applying for these colleges. I had started giving TOEFL, GRE, and applying for the 2 months break which I got from 18 to 9 in the 19th attempt, like mains. Perhaps in 19 ended around September, October. So yeah, this is how I felt that now this is that moment where I feel there's a concept in economics. I think we all are aware of the marginal utility. I felt on this is not diminishing returns because I have put in a lot of effort and commitment and honesty, but perhaps the destiny seems to be asking me to move on. And then I applied for these colleges, these different public policy and public administration universities. I applied for US specifically. Maybe there might be a few questions also in this regard. I'm just trying to give a heads up that I applied for only US universities and not UK or India. The reason because I had a master's in development practice from TIS Mumbai during my PMRDF. So I had that basics of the course and curriculum in this regard. And I thought now, after working in India as well for a while, it's a time to upscale my skills and strengthen a few analytical and quantitative understanding. And US from its 2 years degree as compared to UK with a 1 year degree seemed to me a better option. So that's why I applied for them. And yeah, so I think it was not brief. Sorry for being so long.
No, that's completely all right. Thank you. I will get started with the questions then that we've received for today. Now, many people want to know what is an ideal profile for a public policy course, because some of them don't have a background in public policy yet. Many of them just have gap years and no work experience at all. So what, in your opinion, is the right kind of profile, and how does one go about building this profile for a good public policy admission?
Okay. So like, what do you suggest? Like each question, each answer, like per question answer, or maybe like a bunch of questions from your side? I think this is better. I think when the chats and those questions come, you can club them together.
I'll do that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it was about ideal profile. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
And how does one go about building it? Yeah.
So again, an individual journey, individual stories, individual profiles. I feel I was perhaps very, as such, I'll say lucky to get this opportunity of PMRDF with the Ministry of Rural Development and TIS Mumbai, which gave me two things. First, a grassroots experience for 3 years. For example, I was working in Bihar. It's a place called Sitamarhi, which borders Nepal in the northern part of Bihar. And it was a great opportunity for me to know how governance and how government policies get implemented at the grassroots, which many of us don't get a chance to understand unless we are a part of it in any way, after we join the system or even before that. So I feel getting a profile in this public policy or development space was something which happened to me based on my, you can say, life choices. Like I was working in ACC Siemens after my mining degree from Dhanbad, and I could have maybe moved on in that. I got selected in a few PSUs, etc., which I felt might not be the best thing I should do in my life coming forward. So perhaps my life choices to enter into this PMRDF helped me to gain these skills, which are analytical, qualitative research, quantitative research, your public speaking skills, your time responsive leadership skills, etc. And I think these kinds of skills are obviously required perhaps now in all kinds of jobs and in all kinds of organizations, including development and public policy. So ideal profile would be someone who has perhaps done a bachelor's or a master's course in public administration or political science or public policy or sociology or engineering and MBA, obviously, like everyone in India, I think gets to do. But yeah, I think these kinds of backgrounds really gives you an edge in terms of when you apply for US or UK in general, any university for public policy. So I would say these kinds of skills and these kinds of profiles are helpful. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did actually. Yes, you will get a recording of this session. And I think Deepa has a question. Deepa, if right now you could put that in the chat. We'll have 15-20 minutes of open mic questions as well. You can either ask your question then or put your question in chat right now. Yeah, my next question is from the received questions again. Somebody has asked, what jobs should one take to make the cut, and do fellowships help? If yes, how much?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, that's something I think missed in the previous question as well. So yeah, there are different fellowships and these opportunities, which I feel as UPSC aspirants, sometimes we neglect, but we should really as such grasp upon them, take them whenever we get it. I'll give you a few examples. Like I know a few people in my preparation circle
Just a second. Can everyone else hear? There's someone, I'm so sorry, Nitin. Someone says on chat that we can't hear his voice. Okay, everyone else can hear you. Deepa, that's
Okay.
something
Yeah.
with your speakers. I'm so sorry for the interruption.
Maybe she has to connect through audio and all, which is Zoom thing.
Right.
Yeah. So I was talking about fellowships and all. So yeah, I knew a few people in my preparation circle who went to do some volunteering, like in Teach for India and other organizations. Again, I think I must mention this. I'm not endorsing, promoting any organization, institution, etc. when I mention it, because I'm not an expert in the diplomatic world of speaking the brands and all. I might use a few names which I felt from my heart that they can be helpful for people like us. So yeah, I think there are these fellowship opportunities, Teach for India, and so many others now. In fact, there are so many opportunities in education, in health, in child development, in gender, where you can go forward, do some work as a volunteer, or maybe as a fellowship, as a full-time fellowship. Ashoka University has a one. Some chief ministers fellowships are now coming up after this PMRDF and all. LAMP is a good fellowship if you want to work in the political space as well. Again, seeing the governance aspect. So I think you Google it, you get everything these days. Thanks to Google Baba. I would say that these fellowships really help because it helped me as well. Like I don't feel without PMRDF, I would have been able, I would have not perhaps made into uh, at least Harvard, perhaps. I'm not sure. Again, these are counterfactuals, which we read in statistics. But at the same time, I feel these fellowships really help you, not only from a resume perspective, but also from the kinds of people you interact with, the experiences you have, the stories you narrate. For example, when you have to write a statement of purpose or even essays for these university applications, you can find the difference you create, or you can find the difference between the applications who have done something in this regard or not. In fact, I know many people who also do these kinds of volunteering work at their colleges as well. Like I suppose almost every university or engineering college or any such college in general has these different NGOs, etc. around you, which I feel like I know maybe like everyone in this webinar might have already done education, bachelor's, master's, and they I can't go back and do all that now. But I would say that in the larger context, these volunteering opportunities, these fellowships really give you a good head start to enter into the public policy domain. And so, yeah.
Okay, the next question is, did you take the GRE or the GMAT for this exam? And also, if somebody doesn't have a great academic background, do they still have a shot at these top universities?
GRE GMAT is something which is very specific to the university. So there are a few universities which want you to give GRE, some require GMAT, some require either of the two. So for example, I found in this public policy domain, generally all universities accept the GRE. So you can choose between GRE and GMAT. GMAT is generally, people say, is meant for the MBA and the business schools. So I took GRE and I took TOEFL as well, which is not again mandatory. These are the things which I didn't know then because perhaps I didn't get a mentor kind of thing, which is very important sometimes. So TOEFL is not required. Again, it's not mandatory. If the college mentions a TOEFL waiver, which is generally awarded to those applicants, which I think is very common in India, to the applicants who have done their bachelor's or master's, any kind of education, university education in English. The medium of instruction is English. You don't need to give a TOEFL in many of the universities. So yeah, I would say about this GRE and TOEFL thing. And second was about the kind of like profile which people can have. So I would say profiles do matter. I would not, like just say that no, it's fine, irrespective of profiles. People can get into Ivy Leagues. Profiles do matter, but at the same time, having said that, I'll say apart from profiles, your experience really matters a lot. I see now in my at Harvard, there are people in my curriculum, in my class of around 87 students. There are more than, I would say, 75 to 80% such students who come from these developing and so-called third world countries. And if they would have thought that our profile is not very strong because we don't come from a very strong advanced country, they might have not even tried for applying into these universities. So just because they had good experiences in development sector, in like central banks, economics, etc., they applied. And just because we sometimes don't know what different kinds of skills and what different kinds of experiences we bring on the table, we feel maybe that guy was good, he was from IIT, etc. I'm not from there. I might not get a chance to study in such a college. It's possible that you might not get into Harvard, for example, in a course which you were trying, but that still doesn't mean that you cannot get into another Ivy League college or any other college in India or UK, etc. So yeah, I would say something like this.
On that note, I have a question for you. What were your other choices if you were to not get an admit from Harvard?
Yeah, to be honest, I was not that choosy or selective, like beggars choosers thing. So I had applied for 7 universities and I got accepted in 6. I got rejected in 1, by the way, Oxford. Thank you. Blavatnik School of Government, it's called. Yeah. So yeah, I had applied for other universities. Like I'd applied for Columbia, for Michigan, for Chicago, for there's a Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, Singapore, which is a very good one as well. So I applied for that and got selected in that as well. Yeah, so these were the universities, and even Carnegie Mellon. There's a program which is very good in case if someone wants to study public policy and technology. I feel there's a course called MSPPM at Carnegie Mellon, which is a very good course as well. So yeah, these are the options.
Okay, there's a very good question that I want to ask you. Does it still make sense to do an MPP abroad if one doesn't get scholarships, given that public policy is still a growing sector and where job opportunities might not be that great? I don't know what they mean by great. I'm assuming ROI. Or should one pursue it from India instead?
Okay. In the long question, sometimes if I don't answer any part of that question, maybe you can let me know.
I'll do that.
Because
yes.
In fact, I've forgotten the question.
I'll ask you again. If one doesn't get scholarships, is an education loan worth it for an MPP program abroad?
Okay. Again, this is a very, very subjective question because MPP programs, we say public policy, but for example, in Harvard, there are 4 or 5 programs in public policy administration. Like there's an MPP program, there's an MPA program, there is an MPA program, which is a mid-career MPA program. There is MPAID. So I would say that you cannot have a universal or a blank answer for this. I would say it's a good question. It's a difficult answer as well. Sometimes very subjective, to be honest. But I would still say, just because you found someone applying to US or UK should not be the only reason for you to apply to US or UK as well. If you are in this thought process that there are so many universities in India these days, which is again something I should admit that I really feel good about. I might not know all the colleges' name, but this obviously I knew because I was a part of that. Now you have Indian School of Public Policy, you have ISB, you have Ashoka University, Ajim Premji University. There's so many universities these days which are offering public policy and public administration. Even IIM has few courses in Bangalore and Ahmedabad, I suppose. So I feel if you are in this zone now, that let us have a bachelor's or a master's in public policy from India. And then depending upon the situation you are in, as like presently you're still preparing for UPSC or you have done it. Yeah, in chat, someone mentions about NLSU Bangalore as well, which is, yeah, I think there's so many people from NLSU Bangalore who are doing so good in the public policy and development space. So yeah, I would say that instead of just thinking about directly coming to US, people can also think about that if they have financial constraints or, for example, financial aid is becoming a binding constraint, which you are very right about, that public policy careers do not seem to have very high ROI as compared to, you have to have a comparison as compared to, I think, MBA, the fancy Uber Paytm life, where people earn, yeah, very good. So I might say that there can be a lower ROI on public policy as compared to an MBA. But again, that's a choice which you have to make. For example, I never ever applied for any B school because I thought I might not be a kind of person who is meant for doing that. But there's nothing wrong in doing an MBA or something sort of. It's just that you have to know what you want to know, what you want to do. Sometimes you cannot know on your own. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, find a mentor, do whatever you want to. But I would say ROI is a point, up to you, your decision, but it is still very remunerative, and more importantly, it's very satisfying. When you are working in a space like World Bank, or even in a non-profit space with Gates Foundation or something like that, you would be so delighted, so satisfied, so many days in your life, in your work, that today I made this intervention and I can feel the change. So I feel that sometimes can be called a social ROI and not only economic ROI. But yeah, that's how it works.
Okay. Thank you for that detailed answer. I think that's a very interesting term that you coined, social ROI.
I don't know if this word exists or not. It's my word for now.
I've never heard it before. But okay. Yes, I think that's an interesting factor to consider. And especially that bit that you said that one can first do a master's here, and then after a few years, after strengthening that profile, they can think of doing another master's abroad. Which takes me to the question that, to a problem that many UPSC aspirants have, which is of gap years. So many people are asking, do gap years sabotage your chances of getting into a good public policy program? And or can you justify them?
Yeah, that's a very, very, I think, pertinent question, which makes sense for perhaps many people who are in this domain. Gap years, especially in India, seem to have been construed as a very negative thing, because we have always been said that gap mat lena, IIT. For example, I prepared for IIT, so I know I took one gap year for my preparation. I prepared after my class 12th examinations. So yeah, gap year generally seem to be very negative in India, which is very, very different in US and perhaps in Europe as well. Because you might be knowing there are people in United States, rich countries, who can even think about taking a break just because they have not figured out what they want to do. And this is very foreign thing for me, that you can take a break if you don't know what you're going to do. Because I also perhaps didn't know so many things in so many time periods of mine, but perhaps we cannot afford to do that sometimes, being a developing country, being a resource constrained country as well. But I would say that gap years are not seen to be negative here. I know many friends of mine here who are from India, and not from India generally, more from other countries, who took a break for a year or two, figured out what they wanted to do in their life. And so if you see the applications of so many universities, in fact, of every university, you'll find there's a section which basically mentions that if there is a break in your academic or a professional career, you can explain about it. So that is a very good section to basically specify, mention why did you take a break, and how is that break thing what you were doing. For example, you're preparing for UPSC. Now, preparing for UPSC means you were trying to, as such, uncover the public policy, public administration, governance, and all that, which is very closely aligned to the kind of courses now you are trying to apply in that very university. It can be public policy, public administration, etc. So I would say that really helps. You have to mention that very explicitly in that section. And I won't say that goes negative for people, because I've seen people who have gotten into very good universities. Like there's a friend of mine, he's now doing his master's in public policy from London School of Economics, and he had perhaps more than 3 or 4 years of break sometimes in his resume and all. But again, on this aspect, I would like to still reiterate something, that having a 4 years, 5 years, 6 years break, which is so sometimes disheartening for even the person who is doing that, because he or she gave his full commitment and effort into the whole examination. I would still urge you, or everyone here, that if there's any possibility through which you can think about doing something during your mains and interview time, you still get 2-3 months, join an internship, join anything. I know people who do short-term consultants and all those kinds of work. If you're able to do these things, it gives you confidence, it gives you a motivation to move forward. And in your resume, you still have something to show what you were doing, instead of just showing at a stretch for 6 years, I was not as such working or studying and all. So I feel this is one way which you can think about. Also, one thing which I feel many people do, which is very good, which I perhaps didn't do when I was preparing, is the certification courses. These days, we have so many certification courses from Upgrad, Coursera, from even IGNU has a public policy or public administration or degree kind of course. I feel it's good to have these things. You can call it Plan B of aspirants web series and all, but I feel that this is also one way in which we can move forward. Yeah.
All right. Do you think this is a question I had. Do you think the certifications from online websites like Coursera, do they help when you're applying?
I feel it helps. I can say why. So, for example, I didn't have any economics background before I came here. And as you might know, that MPAID is a very strong quantitative economics intensive course. So it requires you to have a decent understanding in economics. Thanks to UPSC, I feel I had basics of micro and macroeconomics understanding and a few courses in my tests and even in my engineering. But I would still say that when you are doing these kinds of courses, you get a chance to upscale your skills, upscale your knowledge. For example, if you do a course in RCTs, maybe I'm just using these foreign terms for you, but these are very now famous things in the world of economics. It's called randomized control trials, RCTs, and like all these Nobel Prizes, if you see in the last 2 or 3 years of economics, Abhijit Banerjee, Duflo, Kremer, they did randomized control trials. So I know that we might have not seen or read about RCTs now, but if you go to any Coursera, Upgrad, etc., those websites, you can read about them, you can do a course, and then when you're applying, you can obviously mention how that course motivated you to think more about impact evaluation, policy assessment, etc., which are aligned to the world of RCTs as well. So I suppose sometimes you also have to make a narrative around your life, around your events, around your choices. So I feel, yeah, it helps. Again, I might not give you some statistical significance of doing that and how much it helps you to get into a college or get into an admission offer from a university. But I would say that, yeah, it do help. It really do helps.
Right. Nitin, you mentioned that it's very heavy on econ and quant. So the next question is, how important is a strong economics or math background for the Harvard MPAID program? Do people who don't have it get in also?
Yeah, that's something is like a personal thing for me slightly, because yeah, I had maths background, but I liked maths so much. That's why I think I thought of even MPID less for economics perspective, because economics, apart from UPSC and a few courses in TASE, as I mentioned, I didn't have a great understanding in. But maths was an area which I always liked, and I felt if maths is there, maybe I can read economics and I can learn economics during my studies. So I would say a couple of things in this regard. If you really want to do MPID, you should strengthen your economics and quantitative skills. You can do it through all these different online platforms. You can do few courses as well at IGNU or something else, which can give you an understanding of this world. And at the same time, there's a good thing which happens before the core classes start in September, that the month of August in MPID at Harvard has something called Math Camp, which is meant for people who don't have a very strong background in maths or economics. They basically teach some calculus and algebra, etc., kind of stuff, which are required for the core courses. But I would still say doing something before coming here not only increases your chances of getting an admit, but also helps you to be more confident when you are here. Otherwise, sometimes it's so overwhelming, because like in my class of MPID, out of the 87 students, I feel more than 65 of them are either bachelors or masters in economics. So to really feel not overwhelmed by everyone around you knowing everything, and perhaps you seeming to be the only guy who is lost, I would say that it's good to have such a thing if you're really focusing on MPID. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is, what do you think was the most important component that helped you get in? Was it your PMRDF experience? Was it your SOP? Was it the LORs? Was it the GRE score?
Yeah, sometimes the questions are so difficult, but yeah, I would try to answer.
I don't think you would know really, right? They would need to ask the admissions committee on this only.
That's a very, very good answer. And that's the reason why when I came here, the first thing I really wanted to do was go to the admissions committee and try to understand why me, or like why me, this question, why me? But yeah, I'll still try to answer this. Um, I still feel that PMRDF was a very, very, very important thing, because till then, so I am a deferral. For example, I had applied in 2019 and I got admission in March 2020. I had started working in EY in February 2020. So I had not mentioned EY in my resume, cover letter, or whatever, all those kinds of applications. So I cannot say EY to be a reason for getting an admission for sure. And hence PMRDF was a very, very important aspect, because after that, what I was working while I was preparing was not very much connected to this development space where I'm working now, or where I'm studying now. So yeah, PMRDF indeed is something which I always very proud of and always feel so connected to my heart. And yeah, so that's important. But at the same time, PMRDF is important because you wrote about PMRDF in your SOP and LOR. Otherwise, nobody knows about PMRDF at the end of the day as well. So in my statement of purpose, and I feel that in the letter of recommendation, which you get from your professional and academic references, I feel that's very important. For example, I would say I got a letter of recommendation from some very esteemed professors of TIS Mumbai, who are doing very good in their development space, or who have done very good work in the past in UNDP and other such organizations. So it really helps. It really matters. And I would say that SOP, LOR, your application essays, and then your experiences in your resume, which can be PMRDF, non-PMRDF, etc. Like, it's not that you have to be a PMRDF to get into any such course or something. Like, I'm the only PMRDF in this space of Harvard. So yeah, so that's fine.
Okay, so one question about LORs then. Somebody has asked, should you get LORs from someone who's famous and well-known, or someone who knows you very well instead?
Again, these are very good questions, and I had no perhaps answer to them before I came here. But now I think I have better answers. I know people who get their LORs from the topmost people of the country and the world. I know there's a person now studying at Harvard who got his letter of recommendation from so-called leader of opposition of India as of now. And there are people who got their LORs from finance minister, health minister of government of India and all. I had no such connections or familiarity with these people. So I did not get, to be very honest, but I still got very good recommenders, I suppose. As I told, from IISS Mumbai, from my work in Sitamarhi, where I had done this PMRDF. So my DM, DC, DIS, with whom I had worked, he was a very helping person. Thanks to him, that he gave a letter of recommendation to me. So yeah, I would thank these people who obviously helped me to get into it. But I won't say that it's important only to have these people who are very famous, because yeah, I know they are famous people, but why they would write it for me unless they know me? So I feel it's always good to find people who know you. And I can just give one thing here, which I feel is important for LOR. So that generally it's said that you should have 3 kinds of LORs. One is an academic LOR, which is about somewhere where you studied, which can be your bachelor's or a master's thing. And second can be a professional LOR, which is from an organization where you have worked in and who knows you again very well. And C will be somewhat like a life coach who knows you as a person, who knows you as an individual, etc. If you have this kind of mixed bag, people say it's a better way of sending your letter of recommendations. Again, letter of recommendations are not written by you, they're written by the person who writes for you. But yeah, maybe they will write good things only about you because you are good. So yeah, I feel this is what happens.
Great, thank you. Let's hope that they will write good things about you. That's another reason why it's important to choose your recommenders carefully, and it wouldn't work to choose somebody who doesn't know you that well.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Okay. The next question is, what do you think are is going to be your prospects post MPAID from Harvard, and also the long-term return of doing this course?
Oh, that's a good question. So yeah, now because I'm in my second semester, it started 3 weeks ago, and the internship search and all that has already started. So when you start into this internship market, then the job market also starts seeming to be your next move. So yeah, post MPID, I would say that people go into these three or four different buckets or domains or fields. A is international organizations. So because MPID has this international development in its name as well, there are many international development organizations like World Bank, like ADB, like UN, etc., where you have as such an inclination to join because of its similar kind of whole workspace and all quantitative and economics, quantitative research, analytical skills, etc. So I would say one is these international development organizations. B would be international financial institutions like IMF, AIB, etc., even OECD. Third is a kind of bracket which is called the macro research, because macroeconomics we are taught for 2 semesters. So risk modeling, exchange rate, BOP crisis, and all these kinds of macro stuff. People go into the macro consultancies and advisories as well. D is an area which is non-profit. So these days in development space, non-profit is a very big domain. People work in Chai. Chai is a very good organization. In case if you want to get a workspace in the health space, it's called Clinton Health Access Initiative. Maybe I'm just using acronyms more because of the time constraints, and I think people know about it as well sometimes, the UN World Bank for sure. So so I would say that non-profit is a big space, Gates Foundation, Chai, and all these types of organizations. And there is as well, I would say, another private sector consultancies that's somewhat like an MBA kind of role people think about. But all these big three, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, and also Big Four in India, which is different by the way. Like, I was amazed to know that Big Four of India is not even a subset or a superset of Big Three of US. The US Big Three is McKinsey, Bain, BCG. India's Big Four is PwC, KPMG, EY, and Deloitte. Okay. But did I mention EY where I worked as well? Yeah. So fine. So yeah, I would feel that these are the 4 or 5 different kinds of as such domains and organizations where people go after MPID. Yeah.
Okay, I think I'll start taking questions on the chat. If there's any question you don't want to take right now, just let me know. I'll start reading them out one by one. We have many questions lined up here. So as in Kiran is asking, as an engineering graduate after 3 attempts at CSE, what should be the ideal way to build his or her profile for an MPP degree? And does doing an MPP after MBA make sense? I'm not sure why they're asking this. Perhaps they're thinking of first doing an MBA and then an MPP. Or
okay,
yeah, I think you can just take this.
So, like, should I answer it one by one, or?
I think you can answer the first 2 bits because you've already answered the third part of their question.
Okay. So yeah, I'm also an engineering graduate, Kiran, so it makes sense to consider about it. I also gave 3 attempts as well. So in case if you're also like that, or you were just mentioning my journey, I don't know. I would say an ideal way to build a profile for an MPP degree is what I mentioned in my thing. Like, I got into PMRDF. You can get into fellowships, like we have CMGGF in Haryana, perhaps. We have some CM fellowship in Delhi as well. There are a few fellowships in the state governments of Maharashtra, MP, and Chhattisgarh as well. So you can explore these fellowships. It helps you to gain an understanding of the world of development, government governance, etc. So it's a good way to build your profile. If you get into it, it's awesome. If you don't get into it, you can then look into something like education from different kinds of public policy schools, which we again mentioned earlier. Or you can think even about considering to work as a volunteer, or as an intern, or as something kind of development practitioner in different kinds of non-profit space. So yeah, I think this can be a good way to build your profile and your skills. And does doing an MPP after MBA, it makes sense for people who want to do it. I know people who are here who have done their MBA from IIM Ranchi, and now they are doing MPAID. Okay, so it's fine. You can do if you want to, because this person had an inclination to work in policy in government space. So an MBA he felt can might not be able to make him do that, but people from an MBA are doing everything these days. Like MBA is perhaps the best degree to get and do whatever you want to. But I didn't want to do an MBA, so I perhaps not be the best one to answer this question. But people can do it. It's fine. That's not something which is alien or something. Yeah.
Varun wants to know what kinds of internships should he be looking at to make his profile for the MPP.
Yeah, I think we talked about this as well. So internships and in organizations like which are working in government space, internships in organizations which are working in the non-profit domain, like Teach for India, Gates Foundation, and all that. Yeah, and even like if you get a chance to intern with someone like an MP or an MLA, because even then you get a chance to know about the kind of space in which we operate. So yeah, I feel these are the different kinds of internships. Yeah.
Okay, I really like Ishita's question. Since the UPSC process sometimes becomes mentally draining, was it difficult to get back to applying to the universities? And how was it challenging, or how easy was it, or how difficult was it?
I'm so happy that you at least are considering the option of easy. Wow. But yeah, obviously it's a very emotionally and mentally draining, if not physically draining. And yeah, so when it comes to the importance of mental health, which is now so important these days, I think we have realized it after the pandemic. I would say, yeah, meditate and follow good routine, do physical activity, run, trek, hike. That's a good thing. I think people should do. Maybe I'm getting off track, but people should really, obviously they must prepare, they must give hard effort, everything. But when we get, some time, like we can say it as a time out, it's a word in psychology. You should give time outs. You should take breaks. Like after prelims and after my mains, this was one thing I used to do. I used to go for hiking or trekking in Himalayas. It's a very good thing to do, especially after you have devoted so many hours in the library, in your rooms, not talking to anyone in the world, which is what people have to do in UPSC so many times. I feel that you need to do all this to perhaps feel less emotionally and mentally draining. But just because we invest so much time in the whole process and this cyclic process of prelims, mains, interview, that we sometimes even forget to take such breaks. So yeah, it was a difficult experience for me as well. Even it is still perhaps in my mind to an extent to why I'm doing this perhaps webinar kind of thing with you all. I felt as a token of gratitude to the whole process, or whatever, I felt this makes sense. So yeah, it was not easy, to be very honest. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take Nirmal's second question because we've already covered the first. Is there any online course by Harvard or other such reputed colleges which they can look at before they start considering full-time courses?
Yeah, there are a few courses at Harvard as well, which I came to know when I'm here. But because perhaps I didn't search a lot, you should search their different websites and the different platforms. Harvard has a course which is some public leadership course or on something. Harvard means like different schools of Harvard. You have to might be checked sometimes, like Harvard School of Education, Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard Business School, Harvard like School of Public Health. There are so many schools at Harvard University. So depending upon, again, your inclination and your preferences and interests, you might get few courses, which are 3 month, 6 month courses. Otherwise, for other colleges, I'm not very aware, but Chicago, I know Chicago has something in Delhi. In fact, if you are in Delhi, which many people do, by the way, I was in Delhi for such a long time. There is a Chicago Center, which is the Harris School of Public Policy at CP. And I know people who went to this program. It's a certification kind of course. You have few sessions and you talk to different people who are in this public policy space. So maybe it's a good way also to get into touch with these people. So yeah.
Okay. Shubham is asking, how can we apply for PMRDF? It's been discontinued, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so it doesn't make sense to answer it here.
Yeah. All right, I'll skip Srishti's question for now. Abhirami. Oh, so she's saying that she had to do her entire course online. And do you think it's still beneficial for her to go for a second master's later, since all of this has been online for current masters in public policy?
Yeah, that's a good question, because, for example, I got admitted in 2020 when it was the spike or the peak of COVID pandemic, and I had to defer my admit. So yeah, I feel that again it's different for many people. Few people might have thought that they were in an online course, so they could do many things. I know a few people who have done their online colleges, and they did many internships. So people sometimes use the opportunities as well. It's a very individual thing. If after you start working and you feel that perhaps now it's a time to upscale my skills and knowledge, 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, you can do a master's program, you can do a PhD as well. You never know how much masters you want to have. Maybe now it's time for a PhD, in case if you have that inclination to enter into PhD, if you have that interest to devote 3 years, 5 years, like in US. I sometimes feel so frightened about even the thought of doing a PhD from US, because in US people might take 6, 7, 8 years to complete their PhD. But yeah, you can do that in case if you want to.
Right. I have a few questions on UPSC from the questions we've received. And what we'll do is we'll open this chat for other people to ask their questions via unmuting themselves, because people are just sending in questions on chat, they're not ending. So we'll just let people speak out and ask their questions now after 2 questions that I have for you. Okay, so somebody has asked, how difficult was it to let go of UPSC?
Wow, I think I answered that part of the easy challenge thing and all. It's difficult. I would be very black and honest. It's difficult, very difficult perhaps, because you devote your time, you devote your, in fact, premium time, I would say. There are so many these days discussions about the demographic dividend versus demographic disaster, because there are people who might have to apply, or who might have given their 5, 6, 7, 8 years of their so-called most productive as such time. So it was difficult. I gave 2.5 years of my effort, commitment, and I felt I did a good job. I was honest. I had worked hard, but yeah, whatever be the reason, I can blame my optional, which was psychology, by the way, to be the reason why I did not get into it. But that would not be fair. Like, there might have been maybe in other situation that something else might have been a problem, or even there's a possibility which my parents, by the way, feel that I must have given one more attempt, because I was so close. I should have changed my optional and given it from a fresh perspective, and I think I might have got into it. They feel I might have got into it, which also makes sense, because so many toppers, as we know, have done that and they get success. But again, that's a counterfactual, the scenario which I did not do and I don't know. Now, this is a very good word, counterfactual. People who don't know counterfactual, Google it and read about it. So in the world of impact evaluation, statistics, econometrics, this is a word which is very good. So basically just to give a one line on that, counterfactual is the outcome of anything which you're not aware about. For example, it's like, if I did not come into Harvard, what would I have been doing? If I did not get education, what would I have been doing? All that kind of thing. Yeah, just sorry to deviate.
Maybe let's take questions from people. Feel free to raise your hands, because there are so many questions in the chat. I don't think I'll be able to read them all out. So just feel free to raise your hands and we'll take your questions one by one.
Nitin, how much we can do, Sargam, is that there are so many questions, for example, in chat, which, sorry, I did not answer, because people might have expected me to answer all the questions. So maybe we can save the chat after the completion of it, and we can cover them in a subsequent discussion, or even a blog kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we'll do an FAQ with that. Yeah, we can do an FAQ.
Yeah, that will be so good. Yeah, that will be very good. Yeah,
great.
Cool. Yeah, so let's take questions. Yeah.
Okay, there's Niti. Let me unmute
her. Hello, good evening, sir. So I am currently doing my master's, and in the same field of public policy with specialization regulation. So I wanted to know like what kind of softwares we're using in the field, I mean at HKS, so that I can keep myself updated and upskilled. So if you could give me some insights into that.
Okay. Thank you, Nidhi. I would say that at Harvard, for example, if you have no prior experience in coding or in programming, R and Stata are the two such common platforms, especially for development, public policy, impact evaluation, all these domains, regression, RCTs, everything. But there are people who really feel Python is very important, again, because these days things are evolving, machine learning, AI, etc. So I would say, maybe R, Stata, and Python to be the three things which are important in this world. But even if you aren't using these three, any of the three, and still using Excel, it's not a problem. But yeah, depending upon the organization, depending upon your own interest to pursue different kinds of skills, you can think about that. Yeah.
Okay, it will be great if you could also turn on your videos so we get a chance to meet you. And Leela, we'll take your question next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, thanks a lot for the session. I mean, I don't know much about how to go about public policy in abroad at least. So I have a specific question. So I am an ecological researcher. I have a degree in ecology. So my entire curriculum is botany, zoology, ecology, that sort of background. So, I feel that I can work with environmental policy to make a difference in that sphere. What do you think about me transitioning? I mean, do you see any researcher who transition from purely academic background to public policy in your batch? Since you have talked about a letter of recommendations, so all the people I know are scientists, so I won't get letter of recommendations from anyone who has been in public policy background. The only I feel that the only experience that will be useful is I'm very good at R and Python, which are useful for research purpose. So, but other than that, I don't know how my degree. I mean, how can I pivot myself into public policy?
Yeah, sure. Leela, maybe I can try to answer your question. So great from an ecological perspective, because I think everyone knows that climate change is the thing now. So environment, climate change, energy transition, and all that, which is something which is close to perhaps your domain, you can really make a great difference in public policy. Because when we talk about public policy, we start thinking about education, health, nutrition, sanitation, and we stop at that moment. But if you see the public policy of US, UK, universities, etc., climate change and policies around environment have become so relevant these days that I feel you are a perfect candidate to apply in public policy schools. And you should, in fact, be very specific in your application that you are pursuing public policy because you want to at least change the narrative, or maybe even enhance the whole kind of environmental policies different countries have. So yeah, you are completely fit to apply for them, and you need to explicitly mention the reason why you are coming forward to apply this is because of your inclination, alignment with your professional and your personal experiences of environment. And come on, the letter of recommendation, it's perfectly understandable that since you have worked in this space only, you will not get a letter of recommendation from someone who is from TIS or like that, unless you have a connection or a familiarity with that kind of person. So it's fine to have a letter of recommendation from a scientist. In fact, like I think scientists are big people, so getting a LOR from them really matters. But at the same time, you can have an LOR from someone like I mentioned, life coach, like people who might know you not only from a purely professional background, but people who might have taught you sometime, or people who are doing something good in their different careers, maybe which are environmental, non-environmental. You can take it from them as well. Yeah. Yes, I know.
Yeah, we'll take Shrishti's question next.
Hi, Srishti.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Hi, Sargam.
Hi.
Sir, Actually, I have given 3 UPSC attempts, gave 2 interviews, missed by 2 and 1 marks respectively. So it's like really frustrating for me now. I didn't apply for another attempt, but I really wanted to know this thing because IS as a profile, why I liked it is because whatever inputs you are getting as like policy recommendations and all, you really have that power to implement at the district level. Like the DM, if the DM can go into the hospital and ask the doctor to come on time, they actually come on time, and we can see a big change happen. So what I am having a doubt is like, suppose if we do public policy courses, or if we apply for the fellowships and all, after that, will we be in a position to go and actually implement the policies on ground, or we will only be recommending things and we'll have to depend on the government machinery to do stuffs? That is a issue that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, good question, Christy, and I'm so happy and sorry at the same time that you had to experience this 2 mark, 1 mark thing. Though you might have got a chance to get into the reserve list because you were so close.
Yeah, the reserve list only I am missing.
Okay,
this time
okay,
also I missed by 1 mark. So
okay, it's fine. I think obviously it's a hard luck, and I cannot even empathize with you because I missed by like 9-13 marks, which is bigger than 2 and 1. But yeah, to answer your question, I would say that you might not get a chance, to be honest, unless you are doing something on your own as a startup or as an organization which you like start to really work with the people implementing programs for the government. Because, for example, even if you're working in World Bank, you are still going to be an advisor or just asking the government to do XYZ kind of policy interventions. And you can maybe handhold, but not like a DM, because that's what a DM is so unique about, the position that you are doing things. Even if you see, DM also does not do many things. Even if you, like you mentioned about the hospital thing, even if he or she goes to the hospital and visits once in a week, you feel that impact is happening because he is visiting. But at the end of the day, it's the people who are working there every day, the nodal officers or the CMOs, etc., who have to become vigilant enough to again make this as a tradition, or make this the way things are supposed to work. So yeah, I would say that it's not as direct as a DM thing, but at the same time, just because you are working in a position where now you are respected and as such taken in a positive light, you are still able to work very closely with the government space, work closely with the DMs or whatever in different countries, and you still feel satisfied and happy. I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
We'll take Abhishek's question next.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. Hi, sir.
Yeah. Hi,
sir,
Abhishek.
my question was regarding the time management. Like, there are plethora of options, internships, fellowships, courses. So how to appropriate our efforts and our time? Because there are certain responsibilities, family pressures, and like I'm 25 years old. I'll be 25. So did you have any such pressures, and how did you deal with it? So
that's a very personal question and a very again individual specific question. And you're very right. The family pressure and personal life with professional experience, especially in UPSC preparation, sometimes can become so exhausting and so draining, as someone was mentioning as well. I said something, which is about mental health, which is again very important. Have a community, like have family, friends. Like my family was very supportive, not saying because everyone has to say this in any forum. I would still say that because I remember when I did not get into few attempts by this narrow margin, I was at home because generally after my mains, I used to go back to home and have some good time, have good food, etc. I remember how they were as such strong enough to give me this vibe that you will not be valued as a human being or as a son or a daughter for what you achieved in UPSC, but you will be valued and respected for the kind of skills you bring on the table, for the kind of things which you have done in the past and the things you will be doing in future, and the kind of person you are. You're not supposed to achieve everything to be valued as a son or a daughter. I know maybe I'm being emotional and being personal and all, but I feel time management is important. You are very right. There are so many things to be done, but that's something which you have to figure out sometimes, how to do it. Talk to friends, talk to people, make a schedule, make a routine, do physical, mental activities, running, trekking, etc. I think all of them are really helpful to be in a better position to manage your time. Yeah.
I think that bit is very important that you said about maintaining top physical and mental fitness. That goes a long, long way. And I think UPSC aspirants often don't realize. Yeah. We'll take Mugdha's question next.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Mugdha.
Hello, sir. Hello, Sargam. It's nice hearing to you people. Actually, sir, I had gone through your LinkedIn profile before joining this session, and I saw that you were working as a senior consultant at EY. So I wanted to inform you that after my bachelor's information technology, I was recruited to EY as a risk analyst. But then since I decided to go into UPSC, so I didn't join. And then, so I wanted to ask, like, it's very different what you have been doing at EY and how I was, recruited as the position. I was recruited in the IT sector while you were working with the government and policies. So, sir, I wanted to ask you that what are the other companies in India, if you're aware, if you know of them, apart from EY? And since I'm a beginner and I'm an amateur, I wanted to ask, what are the other internship opportunities such companies would provide, in this public policy space, etc.?
Yeah, thanks to finding EY alumnus here, but maybe not in exact terms because you didn't join. But yeah, Mugdha, you're right. EY has so many different domains. I think they're like assurance, audit, consulting, advisory, transactions, kind of. These are different domains of EY work. I was working in advisory consulting, where with the government space. You were perhaps in assurance or risk management, something kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's fine to be in a different space and then still do a similar kind of work. For example, I would say that second part of your question about the different organizations, EY, as I told you, the big four, EY, KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, all work in that space with the government and public sector, which you can think about based on your experiences in UPSC and your IT background as well. And about internships and all, I think we also mentioned about that, Sargam, that you can do an internship in, again, these big four consultancies or in the non-profit space like Gates Foundation, CARE, and all these health and education firms. Pratham, by the way, I just forgot to mention the word Pratham because it's doing great work in education, and we read even in Harvard as well about Pratham's a report, and it's approach to learning. So yeah, I would say that internships in these different kinds of domains and organizations will be a good strategy looking forward to.